Hi, my name is Kadie Salmon, and today is the 26th of February 2025. So what's your background? How does this impact you and how you see the world and create art? So my background, I'm a Scottish artist. I studied a BA and MFA both in sculpture at Edinburgh College of Art, but I moved to London in 2010 after finishing my master's. Although I studied sculpture, I've always used photography as a medium, creating large format hand-painted photographs or using the photograph as a physical material to create sculptures, and in most recent years using the still images to create moving image. I really love the storytelling nature of photography, and I've been taking photos as early as I can remember, starting off with the old disposable cameras and before moving on to film camera when I went to secondary school. But my decision to study sculpture gave me the opportunity to see the photograph in a different way and to use it in a different way. I was able to explore the physicality of it by removing it from the wall, manipulating it either by manipulating the surface of the image with hand colouring or sanding, or by physically reforming it, the image structurally into a three-dimensional state. And by doing that, I was able to expose the blank back of the image that's rarely seen. And this exposure and the physical manipulation of the image is what excites me. It opens up new ways for me to explore storytelling, exposing the fictional and the often complex and fragile nature of the photograph conceptually and physically. So I grew up in a working class family in a very small village called Aldern in the Highlands of Scotland near the East Coast. We were a large family, and so I spent my childhood with my siblings and friends from the village, freely exploring nature, roaming around the farmers' fields, in the woods, swimming and playing in the burns and the beaches, and in the summertime, sometimes braving the North Sea. It sounds very idyllic now that I look back, having this amount of freedom to explore our surroundings, which was given to us because we lived in a small community where everybody knows everyone. I can't imagine that now, actually. But at 17, I did leave home to seek city life, where I could be a little bit more anonymous. However, this connection with the land and the seascapes and my fascination with the folklore belonging to rural communities has stayed with me throughout my life and crosses over into my own practice as some of the main underlying themes and reference points in my work. My practice does tend to be site-specific, and I spent many years travelling across Europe to work on projects that responded to particular landscapes, ones that were often romanticised because of their rawness and the local folklores that came out of those areas that spoke of this nature, or the nature in relationship to female sexuality and identity. But it wasn't actually until 2019 that I realised that I've been going to places like Finland and Norway, and that the landscapes I was drawn to were in fact very similar to the Highlands and the lands that I grew up with as a child, and that although I did leave to live a more anonymous lifestyle, perhaps there had been an unconscious sort of strive to reconnect and examine the importance and relationship between place and identity. It was also at this time of realisation that my stepfather sadly passed away, and he had raised me with my mum since I was very young. And that really took me back to my roots emotionally and physically. And I made my body of work hunting razor bills back in Scotland. And it was is a very personal work, examining my own experience of loss and grief and the connection with the landscape, whilst reflecting on the collective loss and relationship with the sea that belonged to those regions and their folklores and histories, specifically the clearances. I don't even know too much about the clearances of Scotland in the 1800s, which is where landlords forcibly moved people from their homes and displaced them to coastal towns because they could make more money having sheep on the land. But also this longing to reconnect, because of course at that time was, it was just before COVID really. So I was still producing that work during COVID, and I think that again that amplified this desire to reconnect with place and identity, and how they're entwined with each other. So the next question: who are your biggest influences? Well, this could be a very long answer. My influences come from all over, actually. Films, particularly the cinematography of films. I especially love the Technicolor of Powell and Pressburger. The dark storytelling and the seductive colours and the drama. Films like The Red Shoes and Black Narcissus. Love Black Narcissus. I also love the exaggerated melodramas of Douglas Sirk, which was a director in the 1950s, and the horror movies of Dario Argento. Novels, literature, books like The Wide Sargasso Sea, which inspired my work Moonbathing, which examined hysteria, lunacy and female sexuality. And then more recently, I've been reading A Woman Who Ran with Wolves. And then music plays a big part. Lyrics I kind of get lost in or inspire me. Art, of course. Maya Deren, Francesca Woodman, the romanticism of Fragonard and Boucher, and I would say the list of artists would go on, but my biggest inspirations just now would be my peers and collaborators, and there's so much exciting work going on at the moment, and so diverse as well, and not just in art but in literature. Particularly love the work of Canadian poet Clara Duplessis, and I have reread her book Held Like Flesh several times now. Lots there. I'll keep it short. What are you focusing on right now? So I'm working on a project called Clothes and Bones. It's very much a work in process. And when it's complete, it will be a moving image, an installation of moving image, clay, photographic sculptures, and hand-coloured wall-mounted photographs, all examining sexuality and childbirth, metamorphosis, and the stories around the monstrous self and the inverted commas wild woman, and how that nature or and again inverted commas animalistic nature of women and women's sexuality has been portrayed and depicted in folklore and narratives, especially surrounding childbirth and pregnancy. So in 2020, I was pregnant with my first child, and that was in lockdown. And I took 4 rolls of 120mm film. I work with an old medium format camera from the 1920s. I just love it. It has no light meter. It really is very basic. And I'm not, I said I've always used photography, but I'm not technically minded. So a very old camera that's really is just basics, shutter speed and aperture works well for me. But these films that I took 4 rolls of them, and they were I had to put them away for the following 4 years because I was busy with other projects and collaborations and bringing up small children. But last October I had the opportunity to actually revisit Clothes and Bones, and the film that I took was images of myself 9 months pregnant in the eerily empty grounds of St. James's Park during lockdown. And during this project in October at Haifa Studios in Stratford, it was called Subversive Bodies, with artist Diana Gravina and Lenny Dothin, and other invited artists. I was able to think about that work a lot more, and it was really helpful to talk it through and also to think about returning to a work after so long and how my perspectives and directions may have changed because of that time and space and the experiences I've had in between. So yeah, that's what I'm working on just now. Specifically, I'm working on the moving image at the moment, and yeah, we'll see where that goes. So what is the biggest challenge of being an artist? Well, I think for me, and I know for many artists, the biggest challenge is finding a balance between being financially stable, often by having additional jobs, and finding the time to make work and to manage the admin that's needed to support that work, and also balancing life outside of work. It feels like a lot to juggle, and it feels like it's a continual adapting process. And like I mentioned already, I have two very small daughters who are 2 years old and 4 years old, so I'm looking after them full time, and it's incredible, but it has also forced me to find different ways to be able to continue working. I don't have the focused studio time that I used to have to sort of feels like a luxury to have had so much time. Now I'm much less time, but I do actually feel that I'm probably more precious with the time I do have, and just sort of get on with it. And I've always worked project based, to be honest. So even before having children, there's always the juggle between being able to afford a studio, to have time and space between work and art practice. And so residencies were really important for me, to give that focused periods of time. But yeah, so I guess it's this continual adaptation, but I think artists are brilliant at adapting, problem solving, and finding ways to just keep going. What advice would you give to your younger self? I would say to collaborate with and meet as many artists, creatives as possible, building supportive networks of friends and peers. This has been really so important to me. And like I said, the artist residencies have been significant in creating those opportunities to meet people and keep expanding on those peers and friends. And through that, I've been able to collaborate with lots of fantastic and interesting artists, writers, sound artists, dancers, and that's been really inspiring. I think, also I would say to my younger self to keep discovering and to keep challenging myself and my work as much as possible, and to do that, to keep inspired, to find things that provoke me and make me question and examine my own work as well. Have you ever tried any unconventional mediums or techniques? Well, I'm not sure that it's truly unconventional, as it was very conventional 200 years ago, but I guess I have been hand painting, colouring black and white photographs for many years now. And so hand colouring was used until the mid-20th century, really, before colour photography was invented and became accessible. And it was used to make the images appear more realistic. But I've always felt that it actually worked in the opposite, and that the presence of the hand of the maker and its imperfections makes the image appear more fantastical and removed from reality. And that, I really love that intrinsic relationship that photography has with depicting both fact and fiction. That's always fascinated me. Do you listen to music or have any other type of background noise while you work, or do you prefer complete silence? Well, when I'm on site shooting film, then it's always done in silence. I use myself in my work, and I move around a space in choreographed sequences, which are then caught using multiple exposures on the film. So for this, I do need silence to try and get into the characters and imagine the interactions they're having and the relationships that I want to depict. But when I'm back in the studio or a workspace, music is really important to me. And I actually do tend to, it sounds a bit strange, but I do tend to listen to the same song on repeat, and not just for one day, but sometimes for the whole duration of making one work. And I think I do it just because it becomes something so familiar. It's it really helps me zone into my work. And sometimes the song, it's the energy that it has, or it's the lyrics, either of which may kind of echo with the work that I'm making in some way. And so in the past, I've had works that I made with the soundtrack of Kurt Weill in the background, one song, Pale Yellow, on repeat, and recently Olivia Dean's Messy and Ari Lennox's Static I've been listening to whilst making my work Clothes and Bones. What's the best reaction someone has had to your artwork? Well, I'm not sure if it can be said as the best, but certainly the biggest reaction I've had would be actually I had my solo show last year where I was finally able to showcase the Hunt and Razorbills work that I made during the lockdown. And I said that was a very personal work for me, and it did trigger a couple of people who watched the moving image. I did have some people who came up to me who had cried watching it, or had felt really moved by it. And it is a film that talks about grief and identity, and so I guess it really resonated with those people, and that for me it really was something incredible and special to see and to share with those people. And I think that's what really drives me when I'm making work, is this desire to tell stories that might connect with people in some way and trigger a feeling, whatever that feeling might be. And so I guess the next question, what do you hope people take away from your artwork, is kind of what I've just said, to connect in some way through storytelling and to feel something. I mean, it's a big ask, someone might see the work and they might not feel anything, but you might have that one person that really does connect with the work and it resonates with them, and makes them just builds this sort of connection with the person through shared experience or feeling. So that's it. Thank you so much for this, the opportunity to have this interview and to talk about my practice. You can find out more about my work at Salmon Kadie, and also www.kadiesalmon.co.uk. Thank you very much.